I'm Dr. Rebecca Lane, and what I'm going to share with you today will challenge everything conventional cardiology has taught you about arterial disease. For nearly 2 decades, I've worked inside cardiac operating suites, and I've witnessed firsthand what happens when the standard protocols fail. Let me be clear from the start. There's a way to reverse plaque buildup in your vessels, and it doesn't involve the usual suspects you've been hearing about online. You've probably come across claims that certain drinks or supplements can magically dissolve blockages. Let me save you some time. Those ideas are fundamentally flawed. Your cardiovascular system isn't a drainage system clogged with residue. What's happening inside your arterial walls is far more complex, and understanding this complexity is the only path to real solutions. Here's what actually occurs. The process begins at the cellular level, in the delicate inner lining of your blood vessels. These endothelial cells normally produce a crucial signaling molecule that keeps everything running smoothly. When this system breaks down due to metabolic stress, inflammation, or other insults, particles of LDL cholesterol slip through gaps in this barrier and become trapped beneath the surface. Once isolated in the vessel wall, these particles undergo chemical changes. They become oxidized, essentially damaged by reactive molecules in the surrounding tissue. Your immune system detects these altered particles and interprets them as threats. White blood cells migrate into the area, transform into specialized scavenger cells, and begin consuming the oxidized cholesterol. But here's where things go wrong. These cells become overloaded. They swell with lipid they can't process and turn into what researchers call foam cells. These bloated immune cells are the actual building blocks of plaque. They accumulate, die, release their contents, and trigger an escalating inflammatory cycle that builds upon itself for years or even decades. The real danger isn't necessarily the gradual narrowing you might expect. It's the instability of these lesions. A plaque with a thin, fibrous cap covering a core of inflammatory debris can rupture without warning. When that happens, your blood clotting system activates instantly, forming a blockage that cuts off circulation. The outcome depends on location. In the heart, it's a myocardial infarction. In the brain, a stroke. This can happen even when the blockage was previously only moderate in size. That's why the conventional approach falls short. Cardiologists measure stenosis, the degree of narrowing. If it crosses a certain threshold, they place a stent. But stenting addresses flow, not the underlying biology. The inflammation persists, the foam cells remain, and the plaques that weren't treated, the ones at 40 or 50% occlusion, those are often the ones that cause sudden events. What we need is a fundamentally different strategy. Instead of just reducing the cholesterol entering your arteries, we need to activate the pathways that remove cholesterol already embedded in your vessel walls. This reverse transport system exists in your body right now. HDL particles are designed to extract cholesterol from tissues and ferry it back to your liver for elimination. The problem is that in most people, this system isn't functioning optimally. The cellular machinery responsible for loading cholesterol onto HDL particles has been turned down or switched off. There's a specific transporter protein, ABCA1, that acts as the exit door for cholesterol trapped in foam cells. When this protein is expressed and active, cholesterol gets pumped out, loaded onto HDL, and carried away. The foam cells shrink, the plaque burden decreases, but most people's ABCA1 activity is suppressed, which means reverse transport has stalled. Beyond cholesterol, there's another critical issue: calcium deposition. As plaques mature and inflammatory cells die, your body attempts to wall off the damage by laying down calcium deposits. Over time, this calcification turns flexible arteries into rigid tubes. We measure this with coronary calcium scoring, and the numbers can be alarming. A score above 400 indicates severe disease. Above 1,000, you're in critical territory. Let me tell you about a patient I worked with. I'll call him Michael. He was 66, felt perfectly healthy, no symptoms whatsoever. Routine screening revealed a calcium score of 812. Further imaging showed significant blockages, though not severe enough for surgical intervention. His physician prescribed standard therapy, high-dose statin, low-fat eating plan, regular walking. Michael followed every instruction precisely. 12 months later, his calcium score had climbed to 947. Despite medication, despite dietary compliance, despite exercise, the disease was advancing. The calcium was accumulating. The plaque was hardening. When he came to see me, I explained what the textbooks often miss. Statins reduce circulating LDL, which is valuable, but they don't activate reverse cholesterol transport. They don't halt calcification. They don't address the mechanisms driving progression. I introduced Michael to a different approach, one built on activating specific cellular pathways through targeted nutrition. This isn't about generic healthy eating. It's about consuming particular compounds in precise combinations to trigger biological responses. The foundation is restoring nitric oxide production. This molecule is essential for vascular health. It dilates your vessels, prevents cellular adhesion, and maintains endothelial integrity. In arterial disease, nitric oxide generation is impaired, but there's a pathway to restore it, one that involves dietary nitrates. When you consume foods rich in nitrates, your body absorbs them, concentrates them in your saliva, and then bacteria in your mouth convert them into nitrite. This nitrite is swallowed, absorbed, and ultimately transformed into nitric oxide throughout your circulation. The key foods are leafy greens, like arugula, and root vegetables, like beets. 2 to 3 cups of fresh arugula provides the necessary nitrate load. Within hours of consumption, vascular function improves, blood pressure drops slightly, circulation increases. But there's a critical requirement. The oral bacteria that perform this conversion must be present and healthy. If you use antiseptic mouthwash, you destroy these bacteria. The pathway collapses. Nitric oxide production fails. So if you're serious about this approach, eliminate mouthwash completely. Brush and floss, but stop killing the bacteria that are keeping your cardiovascular system alive. Next, we need to activate ABCA1 and get reverse cholesterol transport moving. For this, we turn to high-quality extra virgin olive oil, specifically oil rich in polyphenolic compounds. There's one phenolic in particular, called oleocanthal, that has remarkable properties. It reduces inflammation by inhibiting the same enzymes targeted by anti-inflammatory drugs. More importantly, it upregulates ABCA1 expression. Your foam cells start producing more of this transporter protein. Cholesterol begins flowing out. This has been validated in large clinical trials. The pre-dimed study in Spain tracked thousands of high-risk individuals. Those consuming about 4 tablespoons of high phenolic olive oil daily had a 30% reduction in cardiovascular events compared to those on low-fat diets. But the olive oil must be high in phenolics, fresh, cold-pressed, from recent harvest. When you taste it, it should have a sharp, peppery bite that makes you cough slightly. That burn is oleocanthal. If your olive oil tastes mild and smooth, it lacks the compounds you need. The third mechanism we must address is calcification. For this, we need vitamin K2, specifically the MK7 form. This nutrient activates a protein called matrix GLA protein that prevents calcium from depositing in soft tissues. It directs calcium into bone, where it belongs, and out of arteries, where it causes harm. Without adequate K2, MG remains inactive and calcium accumulates unchecked. The richest food source is natto, a fermented soybean product from Japan. It's pungent and slimy, admittedly an acquired taste for most Western palates, but it delivers therapeutic levels of MK7. Studies show that populations consuming natto regularly have lower calcium scores and more flexible arteries. When researchers supplemented people with MK7, calcium scores stabilized and in some cases reversed. If natto isn't palatable, aged cheeses like Gouda contain moderate amounts of K2, though you'd need several ounces daily. Supplementation is also an option, 180 to 360 micrograms of MK7 per day. Finally, we need to prevent LDL oxidation in the first place. If we can keep LDL particles from becoming oxidized, they won't be recognized as foreign by immune cells. No foam cells form, no plaque develops. The most effective compounds for this are found in pomegranates. These polyphenols, called plaques, actually bind to LDL particles and shield them from oxidative damage. Human studies using pomegranate consumption for 1 year showed regression of carotid artery plaque thickness. The mechanism was clear. LDL oxidation had dropped dramatically. Pomegranate also enhances an enzyme called paraoxinase that rides on HDL particles and breaks down oxidized lipids. This makes your HDL more protective and functional. Use the whole fruit, specifically the arils, the seed sacs. 1 cup provides therapeutic levels of these protective polyphenols. Here's how these elements come together into a single daily meal. Start with a generous bed of fresh arugula, 2 to 3 cups. Add 1 cup of pomegranate arils. Dress liberally with high phenolic extra virgin olive oil, 3 to 4 tablespoons. If you can manage natto, include 50 grams on the side. If not, add 3 ounces of aged Gouda or take an MK7 supplement with the meal. This combination activates nitric oxide production, turns on reverse cholesterol transport, halts calcification, and prevents oxidation. Each component targets a specific pathway. This isn't a salad, it's a biochemical intervention. Michael adopted this protocol. He consumed this meal every single day without exception. We repeated his calcium score 18 months later. It had dropped to 873. Over the following years, it continued to decline. The calcium was being reabsorbed. The plaque was regressing. He never required surgery. Now I know the objections forming in your mind. First, you're thinking this contains too much fat. 4 tablespoons of oil is over 400 calories. Here's the reality. The low-fat doctrine has been a catastrophic failure for cardiovascular health. When you restrict fat intake, your HDL drops, reverse cholesterol transport slows. Your liver converts excess carbohydrates into triglycerides that package into highly atherogenic particles. Small, dense LDL increases, the type most prone to penetrating vessel walls and oxidizing. When you consume the right fats, olive oil and omega-3s, your lipid profile improves. HDL rises, triglycerides fall, LDL particles become larger and more buoyant. Mediterranean populations eating 40% of calories from fat have the world's lowest cardiovascular disease rates. It's not the quantity of fat, it's the quality and its metabolic effects. Second objection, this is expensive and time-consuming. If a physician prescribed a medication and told you to take it daily, you'd comply. This meal is medicine. It activates pathways that pharmaceuticals cannot. The cost is perhaps $10 to $15 per day. Compare that to the 6-figure expense of bypass surgery or the devastating cost of a heart attack, both financial and personal. As for time, preparation takes less than 10 minutes. If you can't invest 10 minutes to potentially save your life, you need to reconsider your priorities. Third, what about studies showing antioxidant supplements fail to prevent cardiovascular events? Those studies used isolated synthetic vitamins. We're discussing whole foods containing thousands of synergistic compounds. Pomegranates aren't just vitamin C. They're a complex matrix of polyphenols, anthocyanins, and tannins that work together, interact with gut bacteria, and influence gene expression. This is why food-based interventions succeed where supplements fail. Fourth, isn't my statin sufficient? Statins reduce LDL levels, which helps slow progression and may stabilize plaque, but they don't reverse disease. They don't activate BCA1. They don't stop calcification. They don't prevent oxidation. Michael was on maximum dose statin therapy, and his calcium score still climbed. You need both. Medication to lower LDL burden, nutrition to activate reversal pathways. Combined, they work. Separately, they're incomplete. I want to be transparent about why I'm sharing this information. I'm exhausted from seeing preventable outcomes. I'm tired of performing complex surgeries on people who were never taught how the disease could be reversed. I'm frustrated watching patients trust their doctors completely, follow standard recommendations precisely, and still end up disabled or dead. So I created this platform to teach the actual mechanisms, the real biology, the interventions that published research supports, but conventional practice ignores. If this information has value for you, I need your engagement. Subscribe to this channel so the algorithm recognizes its worth and shows it to others who need it. Leave a comment sharing your experience or calcium score. Each comment signals to the platform that this content matters. Share this video with anyone dealing with cardiovascular disease or at risk for it. Someone in a hospital bed right now recovering from a cardiac event could have prevented it with this knowledge, but they never saw it because it wasn't shared widely enough. Let me give you implementation specifics. Source fresh organic arugula if possible, though conventional actually contains higher nitrate levels due to nitrogen fertilizers. 2 to 3 cups daily. For pomegranates, buy whole fruit and learn to extract the arils, or purchase pre-packaged arils for convenience. 1 cup daily. For olive oil, look for bottles listing polyphenol content, at least 250 milligrams per kilogram. Buy dark glass bottles with recent harvest dates. Use within 6 months of opening. For natto, check Asian grocery stores in the frozen section. Thaw overnight and consume 50 grams daily. If that's not feasible, use aged Gouda, 5 years or older, 3 ounces daily, or take an MK7 supplement, 180 micrograms with the meal. Timing matters. I prefer consuming this at lunch because nitric oxide production peaks 2 to 3 hours after nitrate intake. Your afternoon circulation will be optimized when you're active. But dinner works too. Just maintain consistency, same time every day. Preparation is straightforward. Rinse and dry the arugula, place in a large bowl, add pomegranate arils, drizzle with olive oil, toss, add salt and pepper if desired. Eat slowly, chewing thoroughly. The nitrates need contact time with oral bacteria for conversion. Don't rush. If using natto, consume it separately as its strong flavor can overwhelm the salad. If using cheese, crumble it on top. If supplementing, take it with your first bite. Critical mistakes to avoid. See, never use mouthwash. This destroys the bacterial pathway for nitric oxide production. The entire protocol fails without those bacteria. Don't skip the olive oil to reduce calories. The oleocanthal is non-negotiable. Without it, you're not activating ABCA1. Don't use cheap olive oil. Much of it is adulterated, oxidized, or rancid. Invest in quality. Don't substitute spinach for arugula. Spinach contains oxalates that interfere with mineral absorption. Don't expect this meal to compensate for an otherwise poor diet. Avoid seed oils, excess sugar, and refined carbohydrates. This meal is your foundation, but you must build the rest of the structure properly. To track effectiveness, you need objective data. Get a baseline calcium score, then repeat in 18 to 24 months. If stable or decreasing, the protocol is working. Get advanced lipid testing, not just basic cholesterol numbers. You want LDL particle count, particle size, HDL particle count, ApoB, and LPA. Get carotid ultrasound to measure intima media thickness annually. Check high-sensitivity C-reactive protein to assess inflammation. You want it below 1, ideally below 0.5. These tests cost money but provide proof. They show whether the intervention is working or needs adjustment. You might wonder why your physician hasn't mentioned any of this. Medical education is structured around pharmacology and procedures, not nutrition and cellular biology. Most medical schools provide fewer than 20 hours of nutrition training across 4 years. During residency and fellowship, there's essentially none. Doctors learn to manage chronic disease, not reverse it. They're taught atherosclerosis is progressive and irreversible. You control it with statins, stent severe blockages, bypass when necessary, but reversal is possible. Dean Ornish published studies in the 90s showing intensive lifestyle intervention could reverse coronary disease. Angiograms documented plaque regression. Caldwell-Esselstyn published similar findings. These studies exist in peer-reviewed journals, but they're not incorporated into standard practice. Why? There's no profit motive. You can't patent vegetables or charge monthly fees for olive oil. Pharmaceutical companies fund research, continuing education, and conferences. They're not interested in promoting interventions that don't involve their products. Your cardiologist isn't incompetent or malicious. The system simply hasn't educated him about ABCA1 activation, MGP, or nitric oxide restoration through dietary nitrates. He's overwhelmed with patient volume, administrative burdens, and insurance battles. He follows guidelines because that's what he was trained to do. But if you want to thrive, you can't rely solely on a broken system. You must educate yourself and take control. I should mention that while this approach is supported by research, everyone's situation is different. Work with your healthcare provider to monitor your progress and adjust medications as needed. This isn't about rejecting medical care. It's about adding evidence-based nutritional strategies that conventional practice often overlooks. Your arteries are not plumbing. Plaque is not sludge. You cannot dissolve it with folk remedies, but you can activate reverse cholesterol transport. You can halt calcification. You can restore nitric oxide function. You can prevent oxidation. You can reverse disease progression through targeted biochemical intervention, one mechanism at a time, one meal at a time, until your markers improve, your plaque burden decreases, and surgery becomes unnecessary. That's my goal for you. That's why I've shared this information. Now implement the protocol, activate the pathways, monitor your progress, and take care of your cardiovascular system. I'll see you in the next video.